Today, we're really digging into something quite extraordinary and, frankly, a bit terrifying.
We are. We're talking about the Gombe-Chimpanzee War.
Right, from 1974 to 1978 in Tanzania. It's the first time a chimpanzee civil war was ever recorded.
And what's so gripping about it, I think, isn't just that it happened, but how human it seemed. It was long, incredibly brutal, and involved, well, actual strategy.
Yeah, organized attacks, real cruelty. It sounds almost too familiar. So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack the sources, Jane Goodall's notes, and the science that followed to figure out how this war started.
Because the first ideas people had, maybe territory disputes, food, they didn't quite hold up.
Exactly. And the conclusion researchers eventually reached really upended human cognition, as one paper put it. If it wasn't about simple survival, what was it about? Why wage war on your own, family?
Well, to get there, you absolutely have to start with Dr. Jane Goodall, a true pioneer.
She arrived in Gombe back in 1960, right? The first person to really study chimps systematically in the wild.
She was. And her early discoveries, almost immediately, started chipping away at this idea of human exceptionalism. We all know the big one. Chimps use tools. That image of them using twigs to finish for termites.
Termites, ants,
yeah, selecting branches, stripping leaves, basically making a tool.
That discovery alone was huge. It completely contradicted the idea that only humans made tools. But that was just the beginning, wasn't it? What she saw in their social lives was maybe even more unsettling.
Oh, definitely. She found that chimp society wasn't just some loose group. It had a really strict, tough social hierarchy. Very complex.
Like human societies, in a way.
Very much so. And she documented something else. Chimps using wooden clubs as weapons against each other. And the only real way to climb that social ladder, she called it armed combat. Ooh, as some notes termed it.
So it wasn't just random fights, it was political violence almost.
Right.
A system based on who could fight best.
Essentially, yes. Goodall watched this for decades, 50 years in total. But the Gombe War, which broke out within her main study group, the Kasekela, it was something else entirely.
Okay, so how did that specific conflict ignite?
It really kicked off with a leadership problem, a succession crisis, around late 1970. The established leader of the Kasekela group, a chimp named Leakey, died.
A power vacuum.
Exactly. And this young, very strong chimp, Humphrey, he made his move, seize the top spot.
But it wasn't a smooth transition, I take it?
Not at all. He immediately got pushback from two brothers, Charlie and Hugh. They were established figures. There were some pretty intense fights.
So Humphrey managed to hold on to power.
He did, yeah.
Well,
but the cost was huge. The Kasekela community basically fractured, split right down the middle.
Into two groups.
Two distinct factions. You had Humphrey's supporters, the main group, which researchers later called the SAW group. And then you had the ones who broke away, led by Charlie and Hugh. They became the Ma group.
Okay, SAW and Ma. And was there a balance of power there?
Not even close. And this is crucial. The SAW group, Humphrey's side, had about 20 adult chimps.
Okay.
The Ma group, only 10.
Wow, a 2-to-1 disadvantage right from the start.
Massive. Plus, Humphrey himself was described as the #1 martial force. He was the strongest fighter.
So the Psy group had numbers and the top warrior.
Which immediately made researchers question things. If you have this overwhelming advantage, why launch a brutal war against your former group members? Your cousins, uncles, old friends.
Yeah, wouldn't you focus on other chimp groups in the park if you needed resources or territory? The Ma group was weaker. Maybe just leave them alone.
That would be the logical assumption based on simple resource competition.
Yeah.
But that's not what happened.
So right there, the seeds are planted. This wasn't just about, fighting over the best fruit trees. It felt different, more political.
Precisely. And then 3 years after Humphrey took charge, the war started in earnest. It wasn't just skirmishes anymore. We're talking organized attacks.
January 7th, 1974, that's the date cited for the first real strategic move, right?
That's the one. Humphrey led 5 of his males across the border into Ma territory. And Goodall's notes are just fascinating here. She describes them moving so carefully, stopping constantly, listening, looking around, making sure they were completely silent. It wasn't impulsive. It showed, meticulous thinking, as the analysis put it. Real planning.
Okay, so they're moving like a patrol. Who were they after?
Their target was a Ma group male named Goodall. He was alone, just eating breakfast up in a tree, completely vulnerable.
So they found him isolated, a 6-on-1 attack.
Textbook ambush. They pulled him down from the tree.
And the attack itself, Goodall witnessed it.
She did. And she wrote that she'd seen violence before, but never like this, just sustained, coordinated cruelty. And here's a detail that it's chilling.
What was it?
One of the attackers was an older chimp named Rudolph, usually known for being quite gentle, actually well-liked.
Okay.
Rudolph picked up a stone, about 4 pounds, like a small bowling ball, imagine that. And he repeatedly smashed it onto Goody's head until he was dead.
A 4-pound stone, used as a weapon, by a normally gentle chimp.
And after Goody was dead, the 6 ad chimps didn't just leave. They celebrated. Loud screams, throwing branches, a real display of victory.
Wow. That changes everything. It's not just a fight, it's a statement. Ritualized killing. Did the Ma group fight back at all?
They did try. They actually managed to kill one SAM member in retaliation later on.
Okay, so they got one back.
But that seemed to just unleash something worse. It triggered this massive escalation from the SAG group.
More attacks, more brutality.
Way more frequent and far more brutal. They started systematically targeting Ma members. Deli was next, then Hugh, one of the leaders. But then, the Sal group did something truly shocking.
What could be worse?
They started eating the chimps they killed.
Wait, cannibalism in this context. Not starvation, but as part of the war.
Exactly. Political cannibalism, essentially. Something scientists had rarely, if ever, documented outside extreme survival situations. It's just pure savagery, far beyond any territorial dispute.
Unbelievable. And Humphrey's role in all this, was he leading from the back?
Quite the opposite. His authority seemed to skyrocket during this period. The accounts show he had this powerful will, this real ability to coordinate the war effort.
So he was the general.
Absolutely. Organized every battle carefully. And importantly, he always fought right there on the front lines, leading by example, showing his followers absolute commitment.
And the violence, it wasn't just strategic, it sounds deeply personal too. There's that story about Goliath.
Ah, yes. Goliath. He was an older Ma chimp. And interestingly, he'd actually kept sort of friendly ties with some Sa chimps even after the split.
So maybe he thought he was safe.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But he was attacked. And the lead attacker was a young Sa chimp named Figa.
Figa? What's significant about him?
Well, the notes say Figa had idolized Goliath when he was younger, looked up to him.
Oh, no.
And yet there he was leading the charge, repeatedly attacking the old chimp, who was described as just trembling. The level of betrayal required there is hard to comprehend.
It speaks volumes about the pressure within the Saw group. So the leaders, Charlie and Hugh, they were eventually killed too.
Yes, both founding leaders of the Ma group were killed in these attacks.
So surely the war ended then. The challenge to Humphrey was gone.
You think so, but no. The Saw group didn't stop. They seemed to adopt this human-like strategy. Cut the grass by the roots. He'd eliminate any possible future trouble.
Eradication.
Total. Over the 4 years, every single adult male and even the young males in the Ma group were killed.
Every single one. What about the females?
There were 3 adult females left. One was killed later. One just disappeared, presumed dead. And this last one was actually absorbed into the Sa group.
So the Ma group was just gone. Extinct.
Functionally extinct.
Yeah.
Wiped out by their former community members with a level of coordination and brutality that, frankly, nobody thought possible for non-humans.
Right, the findings must have hit the scientific world like a bombshell.
Absolutely. But the initial reaction wasn't universal acceptance. There was immediate controversy. And for decades, believe it or not, the blame was often pointed somewhere else.
Well, not at the chimps themselves.
No, at Jane Goodall.
Wait, her. How could they blame her?
Well, the argument for over 30 years in some circles was that she was the culprit. Her methods, specifically feeding the chimps bananas and other food to gain their trust.
They thought that caused the war. Providing some extra food led to organized genocide? That seems like a huge leap.
It was a major theoretical debate. The idea was kind of butterfly effect, giving them this high-energy food, easily available, messed up their natural foraging, maybe led to unnatural population density or competition.
So it disrupted the social balance.
That was the theory. It destabilized everything, triggering the conflict. Honestly, for many scientists back then, it was easier to accept that human interference caused it, rather than face the possibility that this kind of political violence was, well, innate in our closest relatives.
So Gombe was seen as this weird anomaly, a tragic side effect of research.
For a long time, yes. But that whole narrative got completely overturned, thanks largely to research by an American anthropologist, Michael Wilson, and his colleagues.
What did they do?
They conducted this huge study, looked at 18 different chimp communities across various reserves in Africa, a much bigger data set.
And what did that larger data set show? It was definitive. They documented 152 chimp deaths across all these groups. And get this, war, or what they called lethal intergroup aggression, accounted for 2/3 of those deaths. 2/3. So Gombe wasn't an anomaly at all.
Not even close. It proved that this kind of lethal conflict wasn't some freak event caused by Goodall handing out bananas. It was actually the most common way for male chimpanzees to die across their natural range.
Wow, okay. And did Wilson's research also address the why? If it wasn't always about scarce resources or, access to mates, the usual assumptions, it did. It reinforced Goodall's observations and the growing suspicion. Most of these chimp wars weren't directly linked to resource scarcity. The environment could be stable, plenty of food around, and still, this kind of total war would erupt. Which brings us back to the central mystery. Why annihilate your former family if not for survival?
And that leads us to the most current, I think, definitive analysis. It came out in 2018 in the American Journal of Anthropology.
What was the conclusion?
Synthesizing all the evidence, Goodall's decades of notes, Wilson's large-scale data, genetic studies, the paper concluded the Gombe War was primarily a power struggle among 3 high-ranking males.
A power struggle. So Humphrey, Charlie, and Hugh.
Essentially, yes. It was chimpanzee politics played out with extreme violence, a Game of Thrones, Gombe style.
So Humphrey, as the new leader, saw Charlie and Hugh not just as rivals, but as an existential threat, a source of betrayal.
Exactly. His goal wasn't just defense, it was to use overwhelming, bloody force to establish absolute, undeniable authority, to consolidate his kingship.
Eliminate the dissenters completely. Like that phrase, rural fees handle internal stability before external threats.
That's a perfect analogy. The Mon group, even though weaker, represented a constant political challenge to Humphrey's legitimacy. They had to be removed, utterly.
And thinking about it politically, that suddenly explains those specific acts of cruelty we talked about. Rudolph with the stone, Figa attacking his idol Goliath.
Precisely. Why did Rudolph, the gentle one, commit such violence? Why did Figa betray someone he admired?
To prove their loyalty.
It seems so. These subordinates likely performed those horrific acts as public demonstrations of their allegiance to Humphrey, a way to show commitment to the new regime.
So the violence wasn't driven by the needs of the average chimp, but mandated from the top.
The conclusion is that the war wasn't about the lower ranks fighting for survival. It was about the elite consolidating power. For chimps like Rudolph and Figa, committing atrocities against former friends might have been the only way to secure their own place in Humphrey's new order.
The essence of the Gombe War, then, was a game of power.
That's what the 2018 paper concluded.
So, stepping back, this whole story, it didn't just teach us about chimps. It really forced a shift in how we see ourselves, didn't it?
Massively. It showed that organized, strategic, total war isn't uniquely human. It can be driven purely by political ambition, by the desire to consolidate power, even without resource pressure.
And that mechanism of loyalty, that's perhaps the most chilling part.
It really is. This idea that subordinate members were seemingly required to commit terrible violence against former friends, former family.
Not out of belief, not out of need, but as a test.
An allegiance test, a prerequisite to stay within the winning power structure.
And when you think about that, you have to ask, how often does that dynamic play out in human history? How often are individuals compelled by power structures to commit violence, maybe against their own better judgment, simply as a public declaration of loyalty to whoever's in charge?
It's a deeply uncomfortable question.
The Gombe War. It's more than just a brutal nature documentary. It really does hold up a dark mirror to some of the most complex and disturbing aspects of political power, even in our own species. Something definitely worth thinking about.